So I live in Lunt, which is in the North Dorms. And if any of you have lived in the North Dorms, you know that the fire alarm goes off so often. I was sleeping and I'd woken up, I'd say like a few times throughout the night. It got to about 6:30 and I am jolted up by the sound of a fire alarm. So I do what any strong-minded person would do, and I put my AirPods in and go back to sleep. About 10 minutes later, I wake up to banging on my door, and I ignore it. That didn't go very well, and moments later, I open the door to a fireman standing outside of my door. He looks at me with my AirPods in, having just woken up, and said, Are you freaking serious? And I said, is there a real fire? Like, what's going on? He's like, there is a fire alarm going off. Get out of the building. And so I walk out with him. He actually pushes me outside of the building. And as I'm walking down the steps, I'm looking at every single disappointed face of the Lunt community looking right back at me, knowing exactly what I did. And honestly, I think acknowledging the dedication it took to go back to sleep, but I went over to my friends. They knew exactly what happened and said, I respect it, and we went about our days after that, but it's still a very funny story to tell.
I think everyone has a moment in their life where like they realize that people can lie to you, and I feel like this was that moment for me. It started in my PE class when we had a new girl that came into the class, and I started being friends with her, and like we would talk a lot. She had her academic locker diagonal to mine, so like mine was right here and hers was right there, so we were always like near each other. Our school had this thing where every Friday you take all of your PE clothes, including your deodorant, perfume, everything, and you have to transfer it from your gym locker to your academic locker, and I did that. And then I went to my class, and then I came back. And when I was there, the other girl that sits diagonally from me was also there. So I opened my locker, and my perfume falls out. And then she does like this with her legs, as if like she's trying to cover something. And I'm like, oh, like that's so obvious. So I'm like, hey, can you like get up, you know, like you have my perfume under there? And she's like, what? No, I don't have your perfume under there, like I didn't take it, like maybe it went somewhere. I'm like, okay, then stand up. And she stood up and there was nothing there. So I was like, oh, okay, like I guess I'm just crazy. And she's like, yeah, I'll even give you $5 and like candy if I actually have your perfume, like there's no way I have it. So I just trusted her. The next week, I was really irritated, and I knew that her gym locker was like 3 aisles away. So I was like, you know, let me go check it out to see if maybe she has my perfume in her gym locker. And like next to her locker is this girl, and she's like, oh, like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, that girl, like she took my perfume, like it's in there. And the girl's like, okay, take it. And I was like, okay. And I grabbed the perfume, I put it under my hijab. The girl who stole my perfume saw me and was like, Aishah took my perfume. And I was like, what? Like, what's going on? And everybody started surrounding me, like, yeah, she took your perfume. And then, like, the girl took it, like, out of my hand and stuff. And then I was sitting there, and I was like, oh, my God. And I started crying. I was, like, younger than everybody else in my school at that time. So, like, I was just, like, easily intimidated, which is why, like, all of this even happened. Then I went to gym class, and then my gym teacher came up to me. She's like, yeah, I heard that you're going around to other people's aisles and causing problems. I was so traumatized after that, because like I could not believe that someone that I was friends with could do something so crazy like that. And like she actually had like a rap sheet of doing things like that. Like she eventually went on to like offend my friend, lie about her home life, and like steal more things eventually. So I was just like, okay, it's like I'm not the crazy one. This girl's just a horrible person.
Two, three, four.
So last August, this was the August before coming into sophomore year, it was a pretty exciting time. I was wrapping up my minimum wage job, which was very exciting. I was working as an usher at a concert venue called the Hollywood Bowl. And it was particularly exciting because I was working with my best friend Chloe, which we had wanted to do for a long time. So we were both able to get this job. So we were excited. It was our last day working together, and it was my last day at all. When we arrive at the bowl that day, everyone's sorted into one of 5 promenades. So it's like a tiered stadium. The 5th promenade's all the way at the top, and then the 1st promenade's at the bottom. And it's really exciting to be working the 1st prom because it means that like you're interacting with everyone sitting like at the very front. And so if you're working prom 1, like it's much more likely that you're going to see a celebrity. So it's exciting to be working prom 1. But that particular day, Chloe was working prom 1, and she was working something called the pool circle, where you get to have everyone, you open the door for everyone going like on and off backstage. So I spent like my little 30-minute break down at prom 1, and we're standing talking, and then she opens this door for this like old man who I could not recognize. Like, I have no idea who he is. But she's making eye contact with me and like kind of making eyes, and she's like, you have to see who this is. So she opens the door for the guy, and he starts making conversation with us, and he's like talking, and he was like, you girls should go out and enjoy the concert. Like, this is such an amazing concert. It was a band called Kool and the Gang playing. I'd never heard of them. But he was like, you girls need to see it. This is amazing. And we're like, okay, like we're working. And he goes, just come with me, come with me. So he takes us to where he's seated, and he's like, I can get you in, I can get you in. Mind you, we work here. It's like very much not hard for us to just enter where he's sitting. It's like 15 feet away from where my friend's standing. So he walks ahead of us, and my friend whispers to me, she's like, that's who it is. And I'm like, who? She was like, it's Morrissey. And I know nothing about Morrissey. I could not, if he like slapped me in the face, I wouldn't recognize him. But I know he's a musician, and I know he's like well respected, I guess. So I was like, okay, that's cool. So sits down, and now we're inside the pool, which is like where the like very first like box seats are. And again, it's my last day. We like don't care too much about like what's going on. So we decided like, you know what? He said we have to check out this concert. It's our last day. Let's just like hang out. So there's a sound booth with like, and there are like occasionally videographers there. So we decided to like sit on top of the booth. It's like AstroTurf on top. We weren't gonna get caught, but I get an email from the Hollywood Bowl who is very upset because they were filming like right behind the booth. I have no idea what purpose the film is being used for, but my head, the back of my head and the back of my friend Chloe's head were in the shot. I don't know how they didn't notice it sooner, but they sent me a little clip of like our heads in the back of the shot, and they said they needed to talk to us. We were in big trouble, but it was my last day. I never had to go back. I had picked up my final check, and I don't plan on returning to the Hollywood Bowl because I don't think I'm gonna be welcome back there.
My soul have to wait till I get back home.
So I'm from Colorado, and we have an amazing concert venue outdoors called Red Rocks. I was about to come here for my freshman year, and I figured I can't leave Colorado without ever having gone to a concert at Red Rocks. So when one of my friends from high school invited me to go to a Red Rocks concert over the summer, of course, I couldn't say no. And so we were supposed to see Louis Tomlinson. And so we get up there, I've already checked the weather, like, you know, it might rain, so I brought a rain jacket, and we get up there, and the opener comes out, and he performs, he's amazing. And then, you know, we get the notification that the next opener after that has been delayed. We're kind of confused, we're sitting there, we're looking around, like, I don't know, I guess there's some dark clouds, but it doesn't seem too bad, and the concert just keeps getting delayed. So we decide, my friend and I, that we're gonna get up, we're gonna just quickly run to the bathroom since we have nothing else to do with our time. All of a sudden I hear something crash and hit the ground next to me. So I turn over and I look, and it looks like maybe like almost kind of like a snowball or ice has hit the ground. And I'm looking around it because it's the only thing that's hit the ground, and there's not like a concession stand where ice has fallen out, like it's just by itself. So I kind of ignore it. I go back to chatting with my friend, and then it happens again on the other side. Something else crashes and hits the ground. And again, it looks like a shattered ice cube. And then a couple more come down, and we're like, oh my God, this is hail. And so everybody just starts rushing into the bathroom, and hail is now just pounding. It is coming down, and then it starts raining. And so everybody's running into the bathroom, like it is crammed, we're moving in. Eventually we have to start filling the stalls. So my friend and I, we go into the stalls. We eventually have to get up on the toilet. So we're now standing on top of the toilet. We've got like 3 other people in the stall with us. The entire rest of the stalls are full, like the hallway's full. People are sitting up on top of the stalls. People are squeezing in there as much as they can, and then water and hail starts flooding. It comes rushing into the bathroom. We're just standing up on this toilet seat looking around, like trying to figure out, what are we even going to do? How are we going to get home? What's going to happen? And so after about 20 or 30 minutes, the hail stops. And then we have paramedics come in, and they start trying to tell us that we can get out before potentially what is going to be another round of hail comes in. And so we're trying to walk back to her car without slipping because there's now hail everywhere on the ground. And then we go to my friend's car, and we get to her car, and her windshield is shattered. I mean, there's hail dents everywhere. It's broken. I mean, she can barely see through it, but we don't have any other option to get home. So we end up taking her car for a 30-minute drive back to where our houses are. And the whole time we are looking through her shattered windshield, and her car rides really low to the ground. So we've got water that's nearly riding up, and we nearly hydroplaned a number of times. Luckily, we ended up making it home all right, but there were a couple of scary moments on the road. And so unfortunately, that is the only Red Rocks concert that I've been to, was one that got hailed out.
So a friend of mine, Andrew, and I flew into Sao Paulo. We happened to meet some people. They were Brazilian, they were young like us, and they invited us to go out with them. We had already been drinking a little, but we said yeah. And as we're walking with them to some location, Andrew throws up. But he's like, you know, I threw up, I feel better now, let's keep going. And I'm like, that sounds completely reasonable. So we keep going, and eventually we get to this street that's just lined with bars, both sides of the street. But the people aren't in the bars, they're in the middle of the street, and they're dancing, they're talking. They start talking to me. I don't speak Portuguese, but it was just an incredible vibe all around. As I'm there, I make eye contact with this guy from across the street. He's tall, he's got sunglasses on, he's really lanky, and he's got this giant neck tattoo. And I'm like, that is the man for me, apparently. So he comes over, he also only speaks Portuguese, but we just start kissing like 2 wild animals in the streets of Brazil. But while I'm doing that, one of our new friends, Rodrigo, taps me on the shoulder and he says, Bella, look at Andrew, he's not doing good. And I look at Andrew and he's kind of slumped a little bit in this chair. And I ask him if he wants to go home, but he's not having it. He is conscious and he's fully able to verbalize the fact that he wants to stay out. He wants to go to a gay bar and he absolutely does not want to go home. And I don't know what to do. I'm like, he's an adult too. Before I can like figure that out, I just start making out with the neck tattoo guy again. And it kind of kept going like that. Like Rodrigo kept being like, Bella, you need to look at your friend. Andrew's like, no, you don't need to look at me. I want to stay out. It occurs to me that I can just call an Uber and make Andrew get into it. So I start figuring that out when everything goes downhill. I look up and Andrew kind of stumbles out of this chair that he had been sitting in, and there's a man in front of him that he stumbles into. And then he stumbles back and there's a man behind him, and I realize Andrew is surrounded by this group of guys. And as he stumbles back into one of them, the guy reaches around and puts him in a headlock. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. So before I can think, I run over and I'm yelling at them in Spanish. I'm like, stop it, stop it. But they take off running. And Andrew takes off running with them. What else am I supposed to do? I start running after Andrew. And as I'm running, I had my phone on this kind of anti-theft cord, and it's just bouncing on this cord around my neck. And this little dude runs up and he yanks it, and it detaches from the cord, and the dude disappears. So then I'm there alone. Andrew's out of sight and I have no phone. But to my luck, Neck Tattoo has come with me. And I ask him in Spanish, I'm like, will you take care of me? And he says, yes. And then he says to me in English, he's like, I love you. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good, at least. So I keep going, and I guess I just sensed that Andrew had turned left. So I turned left, and he's there in a convenience store, and Neck Tattoo and I run over, and he's standing there with one shoe on. And he's like, oh my God, they took my shoe. I don't think they took his shoe, but all of his stuff was missing. And Rodrigo's there, and he's like, guys, I'll call you an Uber home. Where are you staying? We're like, well, we just got here, so we don't remember. The rest of the night, he came with us. He was just calling different Ubers around the city, trying to find where we were staying, until finally I leap out of the car and I'm like, this is our house. And we got there, and Rodrigo, he had paid for everything. He wouldn't accept any money in return. He ended up spending the night with us. And that was my first night in Brazil.
For one of the classes that I'm taking this semester, which is my writing seminar, it's about how representation matters in film. We often get assigned to watch different types of movies. So like maybe about 1 or 2 weeks ago, we were assigned to watch the Barbie movie. And we had to like analyze the topics about neoliberalism and patriarchy involved in the movie, like how it discussed those topics in a successful way or how it failed, et cetera, et cetera. So because I got this work assigned when I was talking with my friends Lena and Alexa during our lunch break, we were kind of like making jokes at each other at how like our assignments were vastly different because of our intended majors. Therefore our assignments are so different, and like they were talking about how much readings they had to do, and meanwhile I was here like, oh, I just have to watch the Barbie movie for this week. So we were talking about that for a bit, and then the conversation just slowly started to drift into like discussing patriarchy and how hard it is to live as an AFAB person in a patriarchal society. And so as we were talking about this, Alexa remembers this thing that happened to us like last semester. Around October, Taylor Swift was close to releasing her album 1989 in her own version. This was supposed to come out October 27, and Alexa's a big Swiftie, so they were very excited about this album coming out, and we had been all there to kind of like watch him see all the posts and information coming out about the album and how they had certain expectations for the songs that were being re-released. So then to appreciate the album better, we decided to like reserve VCAM maybe 1 or 2 weeks in advance. We usually reserve the screening room like 2 days before, and we're like, we hope for the best, but this time we like made sure that we actually got a confirmation that everything was good and in place for us to be there. So then the day finally comes, we get ready, we go all out in our outfits, even though we were just gonna be in the screening room area. And so we're walking from our hall Triton into the VCAM. We open the door and we can hear like noises coming from the inside. So we were a bit confused. We opened the second door and there were these 3 guys, maybe from sophomore, junior year, I'm not sure. And they were watching anime. After a bit, they notice us and they turn back to look at us and they're like, is it important? Are you guys sure that you're supposed to be here? Which, yeah, we were. We had the confirmation. We had all the details that we needed to be there. So then we look at each other, and I could tell that Lena and Alexa were like very close to saying that it was fine and then like walk back out. I don't know what got into me that day. I ended up responding to them. Actually, it's very important. It's the life life or death situation if we don't get into the weekend right now. So then they just packed up their things and they left. After Alexa finished telling the story, we were laughing with each other because I usually don't respond like that to people. If anything, I'm the type of person that if someone is walking around the hallway and they bump into me, I will apologize to them first because I don't like confrontation. But I don't know, I guess we were just thinking about how we often deal with situations where we feel like we have to bend ourselves into like making guys feel more comfortable in a space, even though it's not necessarily their space to begin with, or, you know, things of the sort. So, yeah, patriarchy sucks.
Okay, so this story took place between my junior and senior years of high school. I had a lot of friends in the grade above me, and they had all just graduated, and they had this trip planned for a few years. There were 6 of them, but one of them had to drop because of their college orientation. So I filled their spot on this canoe trip for a week in the boundary waters of Minnesota. It was gonna be me, probably my best friend on that trip, Lionel, and Robert were in a tent, and then Max had her own tent, and John and Jonathan were put in a tent together, mainly because of their names. Now, I had never been on like a canoe trip or anything this outdoorsy before, but we were assured that there were some Boy Scout, Eagle Scouts on the trip, so we'd be in good hands. Morning of the first day of the trip, we wake up early, get our canoes from the outfitter, and we're pushed off into this lake in Minnesota. It's summertime, so it's not super cold. And the first day of canoeing went pretty well. We got to our campsite with oodles of time to spare. We just hung out the afternoon, it was great, had dinner, but then the first night, we made some big mistakes, but we did learn from them. But our first mistake was just not starting early enough, because I don't know if you know this, but up in the boundary waters of Minnesota, the mosquitoes come out as soon as it gets dark, and they come out in like a thick cloud of them. And we didn't know that, really. Well, we probably did, but we shouldn't really care. So we were up until it was dark around the fire, and then we realized that after we put out the fire, there's tons of mosquitoes out, but we still have to like pack up the camp and like flip over canoes and put stuff away. And so what we did is we put on our rain suits, so we were fully covered. We put on our hats, and we put on these nets, these bug nets over our hats. So we kind of looked like these like DIY beekeepers out just running around, getting bit by mosquitoes all over. But we finally get that done. We get into our tents without too many mosquitoes flying through the net with us, and we're ready to sleep. Now, Robert had already gone to sleep before the whole mosquito affair, so it was just me and Lionel, and we were like, okay, we got these big sleeping bags, and it's pretty warm out right now, and our experience with sleeping bags told us that they're kind of a pain to put away. We had the genius idea that we're just not gonna unpack them tonight, and we're just gonna use them as pillows. But unfortunately, it got very cold that night. And I think it was a mix of being incredibly tired from not being able to fall asleep to the cold, and also stubborn that we had come this far without them, but we kind of refused to ever open them that night. So there was just lots of writhing around, trying to find a warm spot on this little mat that we were on. And eventually, what Lionel did was he crawled down to his bag at the bottom of the tent and got out the trash bag liner that was keeping the stuff inside from getting wet, and crawled inside of it. So he was next to me inside a trash bag. I was kind of trying to get as close as possible to his body inside the trash bag because it was pretty warm at this point. And that's how we got through the night. And we woke up to beautiful morning. Robert put his sleeping bag away in like 30 seconds, I think. They're very easy to pack, it turns out. And then for the rest of the trip, we were in bed by like 8 p.m. when it was still light out, and it was wonderful.
So I was home alone. My dad was abroad and my mom was at work. I was like taking care of the house. We have a wood stove, so I was starting a fire. I've done it plenty of times before, not a big deal. Since I was home alone, I wanted to have the door locked because I'm paranoid, even though we live in the middle of the woods. I locked the door. The problem was that the door I locked, you can open it from the inside, but it won't let you open it from the outside. So I had forgotten about it. It was hours later. I went to get more wood. So I go in, close the door, I turn around and the door like won't let me back in. And I was not in a position to be locked out of the house. I did not have my phone, I did not have my wallet, I did not have my keys. And so I'm like walking around the house, like to like all 4 doors into the house, all of them are locked. I'm like getting kind of desperate. I'm like looking to see if the windows are open, they're not. The problem is it's like maybe like 3 o'clock, 3:30, and my mom's not gonna be home till like 7:30, 8 o'clock. So I don't really have anything that I can do. So I just go in my car because I'm like, I have some like mints, so, you know, a snack. And I look in the glove compartment and I see that there are spare keys in there. So I'm like, I have my car and I can turn it on and I can go somewhere. So I end up driving into town. I go into the co-op and I go up to one of the people like at the register and I'm like, hi, can I borrow your phone please? And they're like, sure. So they give me like the landline. And so I call my mom and I'm like, I'm locked out of the house. I don't have anything but the car. And she's like, okay, I can try to get out by like 7. But because like she's a nurse, so she can't really leave unless like she's super sick or like there's an emergency because she's like an essential worker. So I'm like, okay. So I drive over to the library and I go in, it's like deserted. Like I'm sure there was someone working. I never actually saw them. I just like pick a book at random. So I just read it for like an hour and then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go home now. So I drive home, I go in the boot room. I'm only sitting there for about like 10 minutes, luckily, before my mom walks in. I had like a rough estimate of when she was going to be back, but I didn't know for sure because she couldn't call me and tell me she was on her way. Lesson learned to always lock the outside door so I don't end up stuck outside of my house again.
So my story is about my first semester living Guam. As an international student, I arrived 1 week earlier because for the international students orientation. And the first day I arrived, I met my SRP, the leader of the cohort group. And he led me to Guam, the old weird building. He helps me carry the 23 kilograms bag all the way up to the 3rd floor. And then I was shocked by how small my room is. It's basically the smallest room in Guam. After he left, I tried to get my thing organized, but I realized that I cannot unfold my 2 bags at the same time because the room is so small. And also, even after I get everything organized, it's so hard for me to leave the room because I have to pull the chair to the opposite side and then squeeze myself into the narrow space between the table and the chair. And then, because the door cannot be open completely, so I have to find a certain angle between the table and the door to get myself out. And also, the laundry is so terrible. My friend and I spent almost 20 minutes to find where the laundry is. There is only 1 laundry for all the people in Guam. Only 5 washers, and 2 of them are always broken. One time, I think the laundry is finished, so I open it and the water just poured out. And it's obviously not enough for all the people in Guam. So we always have to put others' clothes from the washer to the dryer. And sometimes the dryer is not enough, so we have to put the stuff on the table or on the floor maybe. Also, the fire alarm is very terrible. During this week, there is already 2 fire alarms triggered, and it's always triggered by our burning popcorn. We are always kicked out while we are taking a shower or we are ready to bath. But I find myself gradually falling in love with Guam. I feel Guam grows on me because of the people there. As an international student, the custom week for me is really hard. I'm struggling with the culture shock and it's hard for me to get involved. But on the last day of the costume week, one girl in my hall called Amma sticks a note on my door saying that, hey, I get not much time to talk with you, but I really want to get to know you more and become friends with you. I went to her room and talked with her. Now we become close friends. And also one day during the final week at 3 a.m., I heard some noise outside my door, and I find out that it's our RCA, Akelia, prepare a small gift for everyone in our hall to celebrate the coming holiday. So GUM for me is not really about all these negative physical problems at the end. It's really about the soul of the building, which is the people there, my friends there.
Okay, so from ages 9 to 14, almost 15, I was in a all-kids professional circus called Le Petit Cirque. And we got to like travel around the world, go around the United States. And then when I was 13, the summer going into 8th grade, we were told about a competition. I believe it was called Worldwide Competition of the Performing Arts. So one day after practice, my director, her name was Natalie, calls like a couple kids over, me included, and essentially was like, hey, I want you to do this competition. So a couple of us say yes. We had to make 3 acts that were each 90 seconds. So we started rehearsing, and I'd gotten 2 down. I was stuck on my last one. We're trying to find songs. And there was some meme at some point about Finding Nemo, Dory saying, just keep swimming. And a remix starts playing, and my director looks straight at me and is like, this is perfect. You need to do an act to a remix of Dory saying, just keep swimming. So I thought she was joking. She was not joking. And we go upstairs to like, there's this big costume room that is definitely made illegally. Like every time you step over there, it feels like the room's about to cave in. But it essentially just has like probably 20 years worth of costumes. And lucky for me, there was a yellow and blue fish costume in my size. So then began the act of just keep swimming. So finally the competition arrives. It's like a bunch of different people, a couple people from my troupe. I'm the youngest of the older age group. I think it went 13 to 16. And I perform my acts. Everything goes great. The fish act was a hit. And there's this one girl that goes up after me. She's probably about 16. She does an act, and we all kind of like look at each other and we're like, huh, that's interesting, because she's definitely not a professional, but like whatever, it's okay. We leave the competition, and the next day we hear that the girl that was not that great, the 16-year-old, ends up winning. And so we all kind of like thought it was weird, but we just moved past it. And then the judges actually ended up finding our numbers and giving us all individual calls. And they were like, hey, like, we don't know what happened. We rated her a 60, and like, you guys got in the 90s. I think I got like 9.6 out of 10 or something like that, and like gold medals. And so we later come to find out that her mom was like part of the company. So it was like a nepotism situation. So she went on to the finals, and yeah, I was scammed.
What was your specific role in like the performance? Like what does a performance entail?
Okay, so usually what happens is there's individual performances and there's group performances. We usually have a show, and I would do anywhere from like 2 to like 10 acts within a show. But yeah, I mean, it was a whole thing. It was clown makeup. It was very bright costumes. And yeah, I honestly like don't know how else to describe it. Kind of like Cirque du Soleil.
Okay, so me and my maternal cousins, we're not really that close anymore because of like what I call like desi family politics, and all the call like desi family politics, and all the call like desi family politics, and all those. Growing up, we were really close, and even now, I don't think the greatest of them. I still hold these like memories we have together very closely to my heart. So we have a lot of sleepovers, and I have a lot of maternal cousins, but the one you should really keep in mind is Ali. I won't be going over the rest of the names because I don't remember how young I was, but I think like 10, and Ali, he's like 2 years older than me, so he's 12. So my cousins and I, we have this ritual in which we watch horror movies together every sleepover. This sleepover was at Ali's house, so we were all there that particular day. We watched one, and just come out. And I was thinking about that, and like, so like, the rest of the goals I see like my eyes, that's scared, and it's all good to me, like, and Ali's like, you know what, let's do this, let's do this, and obviously, let's say no, let's do that, let's do that, they're like, yeah, let's do it, so fun, let's get all, let's get bored, and get everything, and let's do it, so let's do it, this evil laugh, okay? This like moo-hoo-ha kind of laugh, and this like screaming, like children screaming, and the doors or bangs open, and I'm just sitting there on the bed like, okay. It comes in like a black to butter. He had this like white powder on his face. Black eyeshadow underlining his eyes, and he sort of just comes and then he looks at me and he's like, you summoned me, I'm here to like possess you, I'm just so scared, here to like possess you, I'm just so scared, here to like possess you, I'm just so scared. I remember sobbing, and because I'm crying so much that my aunt comes in the room, and Ali is like, oh, it's just me, Sanaiya. And then my aunt starts scolding him, and then my aunt comes to me and she calms me down, and then she like promises to get me ice cream.